Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to this development spectrum where not only are you going to learn a ton about all the various options across Microsoft 365 and the Power Platform, but I guarantee you're going to see the most spectrum filled PowerPoint slides you've ever seen. The also good news is you're not going to see a ton of slides. You're going to see the right slides by the right people at the right time with also a ton of great demos to really ground all these options that you have when you think about building and extending what you want and what you can do in Microsoft 365 and the Power Platform. So welcome to today's webinar. We have three great presenters. I want to bring them up on stage so you know who you're going to be hearing from. First off, just to get it out of the way, my name is Mark Cashman. I'm a senior product manager at Microsoft, and I focused a lot on SharePoint, Microsoft Lists, Office 365 Video, also known as Microsoft Stream, and all that goodness. But I've also been always watching what it is that people do to extend and develop their environments and hearing from my colleagues in terms of what all those opportunities are. So let's bring up first our first speaker who you're going to hear from is Chris Kent. Chris, you want to say hello, let people know who you are and what you're presenting today? Chris, on mute.
Classic. All right. So I'm Chris, and I don't know how to use mute buttons. Let's see. I'm out of Tennessee. I work at Takeda Pharmaceuticals, and I've been an MVP for about 7 years. And I'm a member of the Patterns and Practices or the Community Development team, where I'm especially focused on things like lists and list formatting, and also the SharePoint Framework. All right.
Awesome. And your demo later today is to how to develop an auto unmute button during a
That's
webinar.
right. Yeah, it's called Control M.
Control M. All right, so just think in your mind, Chris is going to represent today the no code approach to today's webinar. Moving into the low code approach, I want to introduce April. April, you want to share a little bit about who you are and what you're going to be sharing today?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Hey, everyone. I'm April Dunnam. I work at Microsoft as a developer advocate focused on the Power Platform. So I'm going to be showing how you can get into the low-code world and build enterprise solutions with the Power Platform.
And today's trivia question, if you want to put it in the chat in the comments below, which one of the Funko Pops behind April is her favorite? Tough question, probably the hardest one you're going to get, April. Don't answer it now.
Okay.
We'll see if the audience can choose. So thank you for joining. That brings us to the other side of the spectrum, which is pro code. You may know Vesa Juvonen from numerous community calls and events, but Vesa, want to join in and share a little bit about what you're sharing today?
Absolutely. So my name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a principal product manager in the Microsoft 365 platform area. So I'm going to focus on pro development storyline within my section, covering the whole spectrum, obviously, from Chris and April, and then on my side. And we're going to a bit touch about the Copilot extensibility, but broader also on other opportunities as well. So getting started on things, understanding how to where to know what are the tooling, what are the opportunities, and that's really the objective of today.
Awesome. And I see you're representing one of our newest icons, the Copilot icon. Looks
Yes.
beautiful over your shoulder. So maybe we'll see a little Copilot development. That's very exciting. So let's move into slide 2 and just re-emphasize the fact that when you think of how does Microsoft support everyone and every organization in the planet, the little addendum here is and no low pro developers. Even if you're not a developer, if you're creating or configuring, designing, making something that isn't just only out of the box, but something that is that you want to do, there are a lot of tools at your fingertips. There are a lot of varying skills that you may or may not have, or you might want to work on, or it might be that extension of bringing in somebody from your team or from outside, a partner or a developer, to come help you build that is what you want. But our real goal is to make sure that the platform is what you want and need it to be, and so that it really gives you that ability to extend how you want your business to take advantage of your Microsoft 365 and Power Platform investment. So real quick to reiterate what it is that we're going to be doing today in the agenda, you're going to see a lot of great information from no code approach, low code to pro code. And we're going to really take a look at that full spectrum to kick things off, which is Vesa is going to walk you through that.
Thank you. So kind of quickly looking on the whole spectrum, if we think about, again, the no-code, low-code, or pro-code, I think the Microsoft Cloud and Microsoft 365, together with Power Platform, is in a super unique position that we offer the whole spectrum. Depending on customer size, depending on customer needs and business requirements, you might not have any code or any extensibility, and that's perfectly fine. There's a lot of value within the out-of-the-box applications, as we see, for example, in the demo today from Chris. So there's a lot of capabilities within Office clients and Office, Microsoft Viva, Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, and so on the no-code section. Now, every now and then you might run into a scenario where you then just want to do something. You want to automate something, for example. You want to do a small customization in the form. You want to do extensibility or change things. And that's where the uniqueness actually starts coming in within the Microsoft 365. And we can use the Power Platform. We can use low-code JSON definitions, for example, in SharePoint and in Microsoft Lists, which the Power Platform could be connected to the Microsoft Graph APIs and do really kind of a cool dynamic capabilities within the UX. And then, of course, not forgetting about the pro-code side as well. First of all, there's a lot of partner offerings within the app stores and within the specific stores, for example, in Team Store, Copilot Store, and SharePoint Store, where you can actually find extensibility to take into use. But then we have a lot of customers and partners who are building also in-house development or as a consulting or system integrator and development capabilities for customers. So when out-of-the-box capabilities are not quite there, and then you want to modify the capabilities based on your business requirements, you can do that. And there's a extensibility platform which is rich. You can do extensibility within the Office clients, within SharePoint, within Viva, within Copilot, and so on, and adjust the functionalities based on the business requirements. And that's really what the spectrum is for, trying to explain the different opportunities, what we have from the no-code, low-code, and pro-code. Just to call this out, obviously, which section falls on where, why is Microsoft Graph in low-code, why is it not in pro-code? It's all debatable and highly subjective. Quite often the Power Platform is hitting the Microsoft Graph APIs, but then you're not using really a pro-code development things. Now Power Platform has pro-code things as well. So it is a spectrum of things. And the key objective of today is to really have a broader view on when to use what and what are the opportunities within all of these different sections. But I guess that's enough for the quick intros. And maybe to call out, we have the Copilot then all around hovering, so to say. So that's the overarching thing where you can actually use the Copilot capabilities within no-code and low-code and pro-code options as well. But I guess that's the spectrum. Let's then jump into the first section. We'll introduce the sections, I guess, first. Right, Mark?
Now,
Ooh.
you're seeing that capability of Vesa.
My bad. That was mine.
Yes, you're seeing the full spectrum. Truly, I think we took that word to heart because it's true in what the options are. And in the design of these slides, Vesa, you took the spectrum and the rainbow to heart. So red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, and Microsoft. So yeah, let's jump into our first section. We'll bring up Chris Kent to do the Chris Kent magic. But to reiterate, we're going to start with no code, Chris Kent. We're going to move into low code with April Dunnam, and then we'll move into some pro code with Vesa. So Chris, are you ready?
Yep.
All right, he's unmuted.
Wow,
he's ready.
That's amazing. All right. Woo. All right, let's go. So we'll go ahead and head to the next slide here, and we'll just jump right into what is Microsoft Lists. So we're going to start with Microsoft Lists. So Microsoft Lists, right, is a new way to kind of frame and think about a new entry point into what is traditionally your SharePoint list, right? And they still are that, right? So it's all that power, plus it's this other entry point, and we're going to take a look at why you might want to do that and how you might want to think of these. So traditionally, we've thought of List as a part of your site, or it's just one more item or asset you would have on there, along with document libraries and documents and web parts and so on. And what I'd like you to do is start to think of lists as individual apps, right? And when you work with Microsoft Lists, that's a lot easier to do. Now, those lists can be as self-contained or as integrated as you want. And that's what we're going to talk about. So the idea here is Microsoft Lists are, and this is where I think it's important to have a bunch of ubbles, right? So they are very capable. And the idea by that is it's not just rows with a bunch of items in it, right? It comes with everything else. It's got all your grouping, your sorting, your filtering, right? All those integration points, whether those are rules or Power Automate, or you got your Power Apps, your Power BI. Again, all of the things very, very capable, but it's as capable as you want it, right? So you can start off very simple, and then you can add those as needed. That's why it is very flexible. So the idea here is you don't need to spend 3 months planning your app, right, with a list. Just create the list, start adding the fields, and start using it as soon as you possibly can, right? Because then you'll find out what works, what doesn't, and they're super easy to add columns, remove them, right, change your views around, whatever you need to do. Again, very flexible. And then when I say actionable is, the whole point of using these is you want to do something, right? You want to collaborate on something, you want to share something, whatever it is, and then you want to have those be able to take whatever that data is and then go do those actions, right? Whether those are integrations or you want to add buttons or whatever else, and all of that's possible as well. And then they are reusable. You can copy these things. They're fully supported in site templates, right, or in list templates. You can put those out to your organization. It also goes with all of the APIs and so on, and they work with all of these other tools. So they're very reusable. And then lastly, the thing I think people sometimes don't think about is they are disposable, right? Don't overthink it. Create a list, try it out, and if it's not working for your team, get rid of it. Try a new one. Right? The whole idea here is lists work for you. They're your lists, right? So put them out there. If they're working for your team and helping make things better and easier, then that's fantastic. And if they're not, get rid of them and spin up easier ones as you need to. So let's go ahead and jump over here to my screen and we'll take a look at it. Woo! Okay, so here I am in Microsoft Lists. You can see I've got a bunch of lists as I really like lists, right? And again, these are lists that exist in sites all across my SharePoint tenant here. But I also have the ability to get to my list and so on, so I can see just the things that I've created here locally for me, right? So I've got lists that are just mine and so on. And how do I create a new one? I hit this new list button, and I get this exciting experience here where I get some options here. So at the very top, if I want to start with a blank canvas, I know what I'm doing, I'm ready to go. I hit blank list, and boom, it's done, right? But I can also copy from an existing list. So if I get a list I've already been working on, I want to make another one of that and then tweak it, or I saw a cool list over on like the HR side or whatever it is, I can go copy it. If I've got access to it, here it comes. Right? Or if I've got something already existing like Excel or CSV or whatever, I can go from those as well. But then here's where it gets pretty interesting, right? For a starting off point, if you really just get into this, take a look at some of these templates. So Microsoft's provided a bunch. You can also provide your own, right? So if you've got a list that you've configured and you've set up and you've got all that set up, it's relatively straightforward for an admin to save off that as a list template that could be used repeatedly across your site with all the configurations I'm going to show you today. Now, if you click on one of these, one of the things you'll see is you'll see a preview of that, but you'll also get this nice features, right? So some of these aren't just lists, right? They come with flows, or they come with rules, and multiple views, and so on, along with some formats here, right? You can see some nice pretty colors, and you can see all that. That's really cool. So I want to read about this to see where you're going. Because again, these are really nice to just, as a solution in a box, get started. If it's pretty close to what you're trying to do, start with this and then customize the heck out of it, right? Which is what we're going to do. So for our purposes, we're going to grab the issue tracker, right? The thing about the issue tracker is it comes with a very small amount of automation, right? It's got some automated email notifications to take a look at. But the main thing is it's just got some nice columns if we're trying to track some feedback, right? So a lot of times people use this for things like bug tracking and so on. In our case, we're just going to use it to collect people's concerns, right? And we hit use template. Now, to save time, I went ahead and created this on our corporate business site here, businessing. I went and created a list called concerns. And the reason I did that was just so I could populate the data, but otherwise it is the exact template. I just wanted some sample
Chris,
data
we
for
just have one request that we're
Yeah.
hearing. The little tag at the bottom where you see the button that says hide, if you can
Yeah.
just minimize that.
I sure can.
Thank you.
Woo!
Now everybody can see everything. All right, back to the show.
Beautiful. No problem. Okay. All right. So here we go. We've got a list. I populated some data, right? So the whole idea is it's got an issue name, right? It's a description and so on. And if you're not familiar with lists, right, you can just double click on an item and it'll open it up here. And you can see it just lists out on a nice form here all of my columns and every value, and I can just click on those to edit those as needed. Right? Very cool. I can even do comments back and forth, right, where I can mention and things. So if I'm collaborating on this, not a profit, like who likes the profit, right? Can you weigh in, right? And we'll just try and tag someone here. Let's tag my dad. That sounds exciting. Maybe my dad can help us, right? Right, and that's the idea. So I can tag these comments and share and notify because I don't have access to the item. But the idea here is I can grant access and saying all in here. And because I'm doing this here, all of the conversation about this item lives directly with the item. So if I'm moving these things around and doing stuff, I have all the context here, which is really, really powerful. If I want to change how this looks, I also have some options over here where I can edit the columns can remove them. I can move them around, right? I can even make them conditionally shown and so on. We're not going to do that right now because we're pretty happy with these, right? But what if I've got a column like, say, issue source? In my case, I don't really need this column, right? It's not just a matter of I don't want to display it. I literally don't need it, right? Well, this is my list, my template, so I can do that. All right, come column settings. I'm going to edit. Deleted, right? See ya, buddy. All right, so that's out of here. And I can do the exact same thing in terms of adding new columns, right? So maybe I want to add a column here. I've got all these different choices, right? Very, very cool. In that case, I'm just going to add a number. And we're just going to call this progress, right? Because we're trying to track some work here. And we're going to say that, this is a number column. All this looks good. Let's go ahead and make it a percentage column. Progress sounds great. There we go. Now we've got progress. And if we were to fill that out briefly, we could edit this in a grid view. So let's say this is 5%, this is 25 or 35, this is 89. We're just getting some random values here, right? And that's very, very helpful. You see, I've just added that, and now that shows up in all my other views. Everything is good, right? So now I've got progress. I can move it around. Wowee. So again, get the data to be exactly what you want it to be. Now, let's take a look here. We can also move columns around, right? We're not going to go through some of that. You can change the width, you can change the sorting and so on, but there's also a filter panel up here. So the idea of the filter panel is I can filter in exactly what I want. So I can say, show me all of Chris Kent's things, but even easier, I can say, show me everything of the person that's looking at it. So the at me, right? So you can do some dynamic views and so on. So that anyone visits this page will see anything that's assigned to them. Very, very helpful. And then you can then save these off as views. So this is, again, what I mean by highly capable and flexible is we got this list of data, but we also have lots of ways of looking at it. So this template came with 3 other views by default, but we can add our own, right? So they have this idea of like, hey, you might want to see who these are grouped by, right? Who's got these assigned to them, where priority, your status, and so on. And then you could even do cool things like saying like, hey, that's cool, but I want to know like, totals, right? So in this case, I want to say, what's the oldest date that Chris has a ticket open for, right? So now I can see it no matter what. I can see, hey, he's had at least 1 ticket open since August 20th. What is going on, right? And I can drill in there and figure out what's going on, right? And see if I need to adjust my view or whatever else. But the idea here is, again, do what's easier for you and what fits. Now let's talk about creating a view. So let's add ourselves a view, right? And you'll see that there's all sorts of choices here. Let's give that a name. In this case, we're going to pick a board view. And we're going to organize the board. So organizing the board really just puts things in buckets, very similar to how Planner looks and so on. And you pick a choice column for that. In our case, we're going to do status. I did call it the status board. And then this one's interesting, right? So making this a public view is the default. And what that means is anybody that can access this list can use your view, which is very, very helpful. But sometimes you're like, yeah, this is just for me. Well, then uncheck this box, and now you can have all the private views you want. Again, your list to make it work for you. All right, so let's create that. And now this is really interesting, right? So now I've got a whole different view of this list where I've got these on these kind of Kanban style cards, right? I can drag these around, I can move them to whatever status I want. That's pretty cool. Now you'll see that I've got a bunch of buckets, right? And most of these are probably not buckets I want to display all the time, right? This is not a very actionable list. Well, let's customize it. So we come here to show hide buckets. And these are more like, we're not really going to deal with those right now. They're not part of our actionable items, right? So we're just going to remove those off of there. There we go. Let's apply that. Now our buckets are a lot simpler, easier to work with. Now, it's still a little weird because new's over on the right. So one nice thing is with lists, all this stuff is connected, right? So if I go back to all items just so I can see that, if I edit that column, there's all those choices, right? I can just take new. Let's drag it up to the top, right? And by dragging it up to the top, and then I'll even make it required. It's not required by default, but we have a default value of new, right? So I'm going to require it. And by requiring it, not only will that change that order of the status board, now new's on the left, it got rid of that unassigned view because I've made it so you can't unassign them. And so that makes it really, really easy to say like, hey, I got a snack shortage. I'm going to go ahead and move that over to in progress, right? Now that it's been updated, right? And we can send off notifications as we need to, but it's really easy to sort this stuff right here. And let's say it's completed, but maybe I want to say it's by design. I have full editing capabilities right on the card. Right, and this is all out of the box. I haven't done anything in terms of formatting or anything else to make all this work. How cool is that, right? That's awesome. And then I can even take a view like this, and I can make it a little further, right? So sometimes it's really nice, and you want to drive people to the list, right, to work there and collaborate there. But sometimes, like in this case, we're really just trying to bring in stuff like an intake type process, and then there's a team that works on this. So we have views that are kind of around that team, right, that they might be used to be working on this. And then maybe we've got a page where we've got other content, related to that team, and we're using that for our daily meetings, right? Where I can edit that page, and I can just put that list directly on the page, grab my list, and then when I edit those sections, I can pick that same view, that status board. I can apply that, and I'll turn off my command bar so it looks a little more like a little application. And we republish that page. Now we can see right in line, right? I can have a page that people can easily link to. They're not seeing all of the other distractions of the list. They're seeing just what I want them to in terms of working on or whatever other filters I've set up. And they can even use that same way that we used it before. It's fully interactive, and you have all of your other web parts and everything else you want on the page. So really, really powerful stuff. Now, let's go even a little further, right? So not there. Let's go back to our business and concerns list here. And this is where we're going to take a look at the rules here. So we have the idea that we want to take some actions, right? We know we've heard of Power Automate, and if we haven't, April's going to talk about it in just a few minutes, and some other types of integration pieces, right? So some of that's in your integrate menu here, and it makes it really, really easy if I wanted to create a flow and do some of that stuff. But although there's a ton of templates and recipes out there, it can feel a little daunting just to jump straight into that. Well, luckily, if all you're trying to do is like, I just want an email, when certain things happen, that is what the automate and the rules here is for. So you have this idea of manage rules. Now, this template came with 2 by default. Right, so the idea here is that when you create an item, if you have the assigned to filled out, go and send an email to them, right? And if that changes, send it to the new person. Right, pretty straightforward, so people can track whatever tasks they're given. Now, this is pretty new process, right? So maybe just temporarily, I want to create a rule that says, when you not create an item, when we modify an item, if anyone's changing that priority, right? And if they're going to change it to one of, right? So you can see this is very simple. This is a real just drag and drop, or not drag and drop, just click and click. There you go, click and click interface. All right, I'm going to do critical and high. Say, hey, if there's any concerns that come in that are marked as critical or high, why don't you email me? Right, so I'm the administrator of this list. I just want to make sure. So there we go. Now I've created that, and now I've got a nice little automation happening, an email notification for me. Now that doesn't necessarily replace or anything else with alerts. If I still want like a, not manage my alerts, but if I wanted to still come in here and I wanted to, have an alert for a daily digest, right? So if I wanted to say, hey, send me all the changes for the whole week every Friday, at 1 o'clock, I can do that, right? So I have a lot of options here, and I've never once had to jump off out of the site. I haven't had to code anything. I haven't had to know any of that stuff. So really, really powerful, which is awesome. And now I'm just about finished here. I know Mark's got a couple questions, but I wanted to show off a new feature here, and it's this kind of forms piece here. So I made this one earlier. I'm just going to delete it. All right, so we can see what it looks like. So if you create a new form, the idea is you'll recognize this looks like Microsoft Forms because it is Microsoft Forms. I have that same kind of ability to edit the columns, move them around as needed, and that's very cool. I also have some nice theming other options here. One of the things I really like is being able to customize this message. You did it, right? And so on. And then when I can hit this send form, I can copy this link. Now, what's powerful about this is if we don't want people necessarily working in the context of this list, right? You're just trying to do an intake, you're trying to bring things in. Well, this is a perfect example of where you want to do something like that. And you maybe come into your page right here, and you're going to grab and you're going to add another web part, and you're going to say like, hey, let's add a call to action, right? And that button, is going to go to that forms link I just copied, right? And we're going to say provide feedback, right? And tell us stuff or whatever, right? So the whole idea is we can customize this as needed. You can change that background image. We'll pick this lovely one right here as well, right? Just so we have kind of our theme. And we republish that. The idea is on our page, we wouldn't even necessarily have to have concerns up here. If we want people to provide feedback, they can hit this, and you'll notice that they're given this nice experience where I can provide, a full amount of text and title if I want. I can provide some guidance. I can only show the fields I want, right? For instance, I can remove status and so on, because that's not what I want them to fill out. And when they submit that, they get a nice response message for me. So again, it's much more of that application perspective. And then at any point, if I want to take my data and move it, I'm not locked in, right? I can export to Excel. There's all sorts of intake options. If I want to move into Power Apps, Dataverse, or any of those other powerful stuff, I can. But this is a really, really powerful way to get started making applications right inside there. Now, one last thing, and then we'll switch over. We can just switch over to slides. I'm just going to skip the demo part of that. Is the idea that I can provide dynamic visualizations. Right. So this is a really big, overwhelming slide. The whole idea is each one of those arrows points out to an area that you could customize through what's called list formatting. So you can provide dynamic visualizations for all sorts of things. And in fact, if we go to the next slide, if you're looking on how to get started with that, we've got over 200 plus samples available for you. You know, that are really easy. You can just copy and paste them directly out of GitHub, right? You don't have to download anything. You don't have to be a full-on developer. Just go to this site. We have guidance on how to do it. And we also have lots of ways to look through all the different samples that are available. All right, and that's it for me. Back over to you, Mark.
Awesome. Chris, don't go too far. I got a couple of questions. And actually, if we go back one slide where it's the pretty architecture of all things lists, I'm always curious when people not only hear you talk, but when you think about creating a list, you know what you're doing and probably can build it as you go. But would you recommend that people diagram or at least think, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish? What information do I want to track? Who needs to have access and what do they need to provide and when? How do you go about thinking about the build of the list? Do you just build it as you go, or do you kind of mark it up and then go build what you need?
Yeah. So I'd say anytime you're doing development, right? And I know this is the no code section, but we're making something, right? We are making a little app for people, right? So you have a concept, right? And you want to proof that concept out. We have this whole idea of POC, proof of concept. And I think part of the problem is people want to jump straight into proof, right? And don't want to work so much on that concept. And that really gets you in trouble when you've got really complicated concepts. So you want to spend some time, maybe you draw out, hey, like I want to see it this way. I want to make sure I've got a view for this, this, and this, like for my manager, for the people working on it. And that's great. But I will say one of the nice, really cool things about List is, again, disposable, reusable, flexible. Just create one, start creating the fields. You might throw that one away, right? That's iteration number one, and that's fine, right? You create a new one from it or whatever you want. But that's kind of how I go with that. So again, really focusing on what you want to build, but not so much so that you get overwhelmed. Just start getting in there and seeing what's possible because you might surprise yourself with some of the capabilities that are there. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that there's that built-in flexibility. I think there's also just the accessibility, jumping into a list and messing around with it or trying things out before you expose it to the rest of the company or to the broader team, whatever the solution might be. I think it's one of those tools that you really can do everything that you saw Chris do today, learn a little bit, so you know what's possible. But I think it's also really great to hear how you're doing it because I think what's really important, people are going to carry away that when you use Microsoft Lists, it's just click, 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 click. So I think that's going to carry forward. So thank you, Chris, for representing the no code. And for everybody, when you go and look at the list formatting samples, it really is as simple as a copy paste. There's a lot of great people out in the community that have created samples. I don't write JSON code at all, but I've leveraged that gallery of samples a lot. It's just a copy paste, know where to put it. There's a special place to put it in list. And then it really takes over and gives you a little bit more of a visual candy, some new capabilities, just really up levels what it is that your solution will look like at the end of the day. So we are 1/3 done. Thank you, Chris. Hats off to wonderful energy, wonderful slides, and of course, a great demo that showcased a lot of what lists can do and a way to think about, when you're using an application out of the box, there's that configuration side, make choices, but not necessarily yet writing code, which gets us into some of what Chris hinted at in the context of the Power Platform. What does the Power Platform bring in this broader spectrum of opportunity? And to showcase that and walk us through both the framing of how to think about where the Power Platform fits in your solution building mind and decision making matrix, April Dunnam, want to take over and showcase a little bit of the Power Platform power?
Yeah, absolutely. So happy to kind of talk about how Power Platform fits into this development spectrum that we have. So if we can share kind of the slide, I have a level setting slide where you can see what's all included in the Power Platform and what we have and what we can work with here. So within the Power Platform, it kind of spans all of the development spectrum. So oftentimes when we're talking about this, it's really not an if, it's an or, an and. So we kind of use a lot of these tools together, and it expands, being able to do some no-code stuff in the platform and low-code, of course, and all the way to pro-code. So there's all those capabilities built in, and we have a bunch of different apps that work together. So we have Power BI for reporting and analytics, Power Apps, which we'll see a little bit in the demo of, for building your own applications, Power Automate for workflows, which Chris showed a little bit of earlier and how that integrates with List, Power Pages for website development, and and one of the newer features, Copilot Studio, for building your own custom agents, copilots, and then all of this sharing some underlying things like connectors. So that's really what makes the platform so extensible, is the ability to connect to over 1,300 different services. So this includes all of the Microsoft services, like being able to create applications and automations and copilots and all of that that connect with SharePoint and the Office suite and all that, but also third-party services like Salesforce and all of those different things, and even bringing in your custom APIs into the platform as well with the connector model, and the ability to use its proprietary kind of like database for the Power Platform called Dataverse to be able to have relational data that you can build on, which we'll see a little bit later on. And as far as the code side of the Power Platform, we have something called SPFx, which is an Excel-based formula language that we use to be able to add logic into our Power Platform solutions. So we'll be taking a little bit, let's go to the next slide here, and we'll talk about like kind of how this all works together. So that's the platform as a whole, and everything that you get, all of those tools working together, and it really is a connected and orchestrated platform that we have. So not only do all of the Power Platform tools work together seamlessly, so you can build an app that has some automations with Power Automate and even integrate some Copilot stuff into there and all of that, but it integrates seamlessly into the Microsoft stack as well. So we can build apps over SharePoint list data, SharePoint files and all of that. We can embed the apps that we build into Teams and automate things in Teams with Power Automate. It kind of really integrates into the overall Microsoft ecosystem really well to be able to have that collaboration suite and be able to build all of these low-code enterprise intelligent applications. So I think this is probably best described in a demo if we go over, and I'll show you a little bit of what we can do here with the tools that we have and some of the things that we can build. So I'm going to start in Power Apps. So briefly, I won't build the whole app, but just show you how easy it is to integrate if you do have existing data on SharePoint. We can go to Start with Data and connect to external data. And we have the ability to easily connect to SharePoint data right from here. So it'll show you all of the SharePoint sites that you have access to. So I have an HR site, for example, and then we can see all of the lists that we have. So I can choose the site. If I want to build kind of an application for my leave request process, I can choose the list that I have inside of SharePoint, and it will build an application for me. So the big benefit of this being you have an application that you can use on your phone, on your tablet, on your desktop. You can embed this, like I mentioned, in Teams or wherever you want to use that. And you can extend this and add additional services to this. So if you want to be able to not only connect to SharePoint for this leave request process, but maybe after it's accepted, you need to go put into your HR system the leave, you can connect to that with a custom connector and really extend and build a holistic application. So you see in a matter of seconds in real time, we have an application that's fully functional over this SharePoint data. So here are all of my data pieces that we have here. Here's all the information for that. We can add new leave requests based off of this, and this will automatically write back to that SharePoint list. And it's responsive out of the box. So I mentioned it's works with all these different device types. We have this emulator where we can see what this would look like on an iPhone if we change it to the iPhone. And it even supports things like Dataverse offline if we're using Dataverse. So there's all kinds of functionality just built in out of the box that we're able to take advantage of and integrate with. And as I mentioned, if we want to integrate with any of these other services, those are just out of the box connectors. So we can go to this data tab on the left-hand side. We can add data and kind of see all of the different data sources that we're able to consume and use. So if we have SQL data, we just add that connector here. If we want to connect to Planner or any of these third-party services or custom connectors, it's just a matter of adding that data source in, and now all of that data is available so I can get information from those sources and write data back. So all of that is baked in. Now, the other thing that we can do as well is if we want to build an application from scratch. So one of the things that I wanted to show is how we can leverage Copilot in Power Apps to build a net new application. So if we go back to Start with Data, we can create new tables. So this will be helping us to create an application inside of Dataverse. And the big benefit of using Dataverse, which is the Power Platform data model that we have available to us, is it's a relational database. So if we need an application that's more than, say, a single table, and we want to have some relational data, we can easily build that, and it's scalable as well. So it supports things like column level formatting. It has a really rich security model that you can take advantage of, and all of this capability behind the scenes that's just configured for you. So we can start with Copilot, and we can actually have this help us build an entity relationship diagram just by putting in a prompt. So I can say something like, create an event management application with tables to store details about an event and event registration. So this would be a multi-table scenario, right? And we can say generate, and this will actually go behind the scenes and suggest a data structure in Dataverse to be able to handle this. So it will create not only the table structure, all the columns that we need with the correct column types, but sample data as well. So this is kind of the entity relationship view that we have here, and we can see what is created for us. So we have an event table, and if we look, we have 5 pieces of sample data. It was able to gather that we probably need the event name, the date, and the location. And then if we look again at this event registration, we need to be able to register for an event. So it created this relationship automatically for us. So a many-to-one relationship. So now we can add new events and people can register for those events. And I didn't have to know anything about the underpinnings of Dataverse. So this is really a low-code, no-code friendly approach to being able to build out our databases. Now, the other thing I wanted to point out as well, if we go to view prompts, we can have it suggest things. So if we go to suggest, we can have it suggest columns to create for the selected table. So if I'm not sure this is exactly everything that I need, and I feel like something's missing, Copilot can actually give me some recommendations. And these are clickable, actionable buttons. So probably a good idea to have an email for the registrants so that I can be able to do some automation with Power Automate and add on to this process when they register for an event to give them a confirmation. So I can just click on that email button and have it add that into my table right here. So now we have that with the sample data, so that's part of our table. We can do the exact same thing on the event table if we go to view data and have it give us some suggestions of columns to create as well. So it's really helpful with this back and forth kind of process here of being able to build out a enterprise application. So I can see a description would be nice, maybe organizer capacity. I can just click on each of these individual items and build out my database. And the other thing as well, we can integrate natively with this process with SharePoint. So if, say, we had some information currently in a SharePoint list, but we wanted it to be part of this new process, we could choose this View Prompts button and go to Import. And we can import directly from a SharePoint list. So this will pop open a panel and it will allow us to take data from an existing SharePoint list and move it to Dataverse so it's part of our process. So on the HR site here, I have company holidays. So I kind of want this to be a holistic event management. So I want people to see not only our company holidays and events, but the other events that we're hosting. So just by choosing that list, it's taking all that data, the columns, the setup, and all the data stored inside, and it's going to move that to Dataverse for me. So we can go here and just say save and open the app, and this will create the underlying Dataverse structure, all the security, everything in the data, and create an application and a Canvas app for us. So just to save a little bit of time, this is the output of that application that we built. So if we look at the data tab, here's the events, the event registration, and this is the company holidays that it imported from that SharePoint list. And just to show you that this is an actual SharePoint list, this is where we got this information from, was this list right here. So all of this data is created in the app, and if we look at what it created for us, we have a screen where we can browse all this so we can see the company holidays. So there they are all listed. We have a screen, if we go back to the home page here, where we can see event registrations, and we can see all of the events that we have. And you'll notice this little globe icon. So again, without me having to do anything, this is natively supporting offline capability. So since it is stored in Dataverse, that's another big benefit, is you have Dataverse offline. So if I don't have an internet connection, I can use this wherever I'm at, and the data will be uploaded back when I get a connection. So that's just all baked in without me having to do anything extra. And again, all of this being responsive, I can use it on multiple different device types. Now, other things that we can do as far as building out this application, it's really user-friendly. So you'll see it's not drag and drop, as Chris was saying, right? It's kind of click and click. So you can click through and add in these different elements here. So we have all of these different controls that we can use to build out our application. So we can add media. It supports barcode scanning. So this is kind of where the enterprise app scenario comes into play. If you need to build an inventory management application, you have all of these native controls built in to do that. And talking about ProCode integration, if there's a control that you want to be able to extend the user interface here that you don't see in this list, you can use the Power Apps Component Framework and your ProCode skills to be able to build custom controls that you can integrate in here as well. So it's really extensible to build out holistic applications that you have here. Now, one of the other things that we can do, I'm going to go back over to the company holidays, is we do have Copilot's help once we actually build the application to make some changes here. So I can go into this date time, and for the holiday, I really don't need a time. I just need the date format. So I can click on my Copilot button right here, and I can do some text formatting. So this will open up the format by example pane. So kind of like what we saw in the list where we could do some formatting, we can do the same thing here. So if I don't want to have the dates, I can just have the current format and what the desired format is, which maybe I want to list out the day of the week. And it's going to actually write the PowerFX formula for me. So obviously you want to know PowerFX to be able to really customize your apps and all that, but we do have Copilot's help now to make it more of a no-code story to be able to write this PowerFX. So now I can just click apply, and all of those dates are updated. I didn't have to know all the PowerFX and all of that behind the scenes to be able to do this. And now we have a fully functioning app. And to take it one step further to kind of close it out, we can integrate this with a Copilot in Copilot Studio as well. So one of the things that I have here is this Safe Travels Copilot. So for an event, I might want to know some information about where I'm traveling to for an event, make sure, what are the visa policies and all of that. So I've built this Copilot using a template in Copilot Studio. Well, I can integrate this natively in my application right here. So one of the things we can do if we go to the settings is we have this Copilot section, and we can bind your application to a Copilot. So now that I just simply applied that setting, we can use this. So let's just go back here to make.powerapps.com, and I'll show you kind of what this looks like. So let's see, let's go back over to my environment and show you how we can kind of execute this Copilot from the end user experience. So all of that was me kind of making and building out the application as I needed to. And now we can try this out. So you see we have this kind of Copilot button right here, and this will launch that Copilot that I connected it to. So there we go. So this is a Copilot Studio Copilot built into my application without me having to go anywhere else. So I can ask it, what is the visa policy for Canada, since one of these events is in Canada that I want to go to, and it will go and get that information for me from the website. So there you go, and it gives me some resources so I can see exactly where it got that from, and I can make sure that the information is correct and have everything that I need. So I just built a holistic application that pulled information from SharePoint that has a complete data model and even integrates with a custom Copilot in just a matter of minutes. So hopefully that shows you kind of what you can do with the Power Platform. And Mark, I don't know if we have any questions or anything like that you wanted to go through.
The question that I've heard before, I didn't see it in the comments today, but with the advent of Copilot, I think there's a lot within the Microsoft Power Platform where you can now have Copilot help you get started, help you create an app, a flow, ask it questions as you go. Would you recommend that people today, if they're getting started with the Power Platform, learn the getting started path by using Copilot if they have access? Or is it better to still learn the Power Platform core, and then on top of that, Copilot is then going to help accelerate some of that? Which way would you recommend people start today?
That's a really good question. I think, starting with Copilot is going to give you some instant value and kind of satisfaction. I know it can be discouraging when you're learning any new technology and you kind of hit a roadblock. So that'll give you some instant gratification there to be able to get to a solution. So I would probably encourage people to start there, but don't only rely on that, because you really do still need to understand the underpinnings of everything. What is PowerFX? What are all these different formulas? How do controls work? And all of these different patterns that you need to know behind the scenes. How does Dataverse work and all of that? It's still important to know that to really build and extend these applications. But I think starting with Copilot, it is good just to get familiar with prompting, because that is going to save you time, and it's going to get you, 60, maybe even 80% of the way there, and then you can kind of go deeper into each of these kind of pieces of the platform and be able to fill out the capability.
Awesome. Well, I think power prompting is probably extremely powerful. 2 more questions for you. You were just with about 6,000 of your friends in Las Vegas at the Microsoft Power Platform Community Conference. What was a big nugget of both news and maybe something that you heard as feedback, or just something that you got from the event that you would share with everybody here?
I think the biggest news was obviously, agents and being able to create kind of those autonomous agents with Copilot Studio, but from the Power App side, the plan designer. So not only now can we use a prompt to create an app and suggest a data model, but it can do user story generation. So you can put in your reference information of what you're wanting to build, and it will design and map out the solution, not only just the app, but hey, you probably need this automation process and Power Automate, and you might need this backend model-driven app. And it's really able to take this and elevate it a step farther to help you design a solution accurately. So that was the biggest kind of aha moment from the conference. And I think a lot of people, feedback I've seen, there's a lot of Copilot, but it is making a difference and helping a lot of people to be able to get there faster and, kind of go over some of those learning curves that you had in the past.
Awesome. So the very last question, behind you is a row of Funko memorabilia. Do you have a favorite pop, and if so, which one is it?
Well, I have to be a little biased. I have a custom Funko Pop back there. You can't hardly see it because there you go, a little blurry, but that's a custom one I got from the Hollywood location of me. So it's kind of cool to have a custom one. But then, second favorite would be a little Sebastian somewhere up there, just because, got to give a shout out to Chris and Warrior Horses there. So
Awesome,
I do like
awesome. So my assumption where it says Boss Lady, that is you in Funko style.
That is me. Can't really see it well, but
That's great. Well, we learned why you've earned that title, Boss Lady. Thank you for being the boss of the Power Platform for us today. And thank you for showing everybody that low-code opportunity and how you can truly do a lot of powerful things with Power Platform when you need it. So as we move in and get Vesa ready for Pro Code, I want to remind everybody we'll have a few minutes at the end. If you have a question, just go to the main event page. If you're not there already, you can get there by going to aka.ms/dev-spectrum, and you'll see the comment section down below. We love it if you have a question. We'll take time with everybody, all of our presenters, and pose a few questions to them, and certainly get to the ones that we have in the comments. We'll take those offline as well to make sure that we respond to them. So just go to the link that you see here on the page. If you're in YouTube only, this will take you to the event page. The YouTube is embedded there, so you won't miss the show. But with that, let us get your questions in the comments and get Vesa on stage to talk about Pro Code.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark, on that one. An awesome job, Chris and April. Really, really cool. Awesome to continue on there. That's big shoes to jump into. But let's actually jump on the Pro Code side and talk a bit about what does the Pro Code actually mean within the Microsoft 365 together with Power Platform, because there's so many scenarios what we can actually do here. And we're going to touch a bit also on the Copilot stuff as well. But before we go there, just to kind of setting the scene, the same picture as we started, kind of, but adjusted more on the pro developer side of the house. But what's really kind of a unique within the Microsoft 365, like we started the show today and recapping that one, is the opportunity which we provide for customers or partners to adjust the experience based on the extensibility and then connect to the business data in a secured way. So we have the security running inside of customer tenants. We have the Entra ID secured operations, and then we're able to put bits and pieces and extensibility in place on it. Now, the app experience itself can be acquired from the store. So there's a lot of ISVs and providers and applications in the store. You can absolutely also do in-house development, or you can hire a consultant or a system integrator to build your solution or extensibility. And you're able to target your extensibility only within your tenant. So you don't have to acquire the extensibility from the store. Same obviously applies for Power Platform side. And then there's a spectrum of different things what you can do, from tabs and apps to agents and cards and web parts and integrations and Power Platform. So that's kind of the section on all of the different things what we can do. And in many cases, when we talk about, for example, Office clients or Teams or SharePoint, somebody might be like, if only we would have X and Y and Z on this. And it might be possible. So have a look on what's possible with no code, with low code, and with pro code. There's a lot of opportunities and configuration options. But that spectrum is super wide. And from a extensibility and pro code development perspective, there is a pro development story also for Power Platform. That's why that is over there. There's the Office client story. We can do also development story for Microsoft Viva. We can extend and modify Microsoft Teams. And of course, SharePoint is a super capable platform as well. You can do web parts extensions and custom portals and all of that stuff. And then we have the Office app, which can be extended as well. So a lot of different options for pro development side of the house. And not forgetting about the Copilot, which is overarching everything and which you can customize as well. Now, talking about the Copilot, as we've shown many times already, it is really truly the age of Copilots or age of agents, as we're now transforming in our message. Well, it is still Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is the main thing where we're surfacing functionalities, and then there's multiple other Copilots. Well, Microsoft Copilots exposed, for example, in Power Platform. Now, I wanted to kind of quickly recap the Copilot opportunity. We're going to do a quick video there, and then we're going to have a look on the different assets which are available for us to get started within this journey. First of all, if we think about the different extensibility options for the Microsoft 365 Copilot, or adjustment options, or, well, they are extensibility options. We can adapt the Microsoft 365 Copilot, and that means the information architecture, user training, adjustments. So you're able to do a lot of stuff in the Copilot without any code, without any complexity on things. The second option is then to extend. And that's when we actually create declarative agents. We do functionalities and define how the extension will be adapting or connecting to external data. And then that changes the behavior of the Copilot and changes the results and what you're seeing within the Copilot chat. You could actually see user interface elements there as well, not just the text, which is really, really cool. And then we also offer an option to really do custom engine agents. And this basically means that you will take responsibility of implement. You can adapt that to any LLM. There's a Teams AI SDK. There's a lot of opportunities for AI level integration within the Microsoft 365. And really kind of the value there is that the business data and the people, the Microsoft craft behind the scenes, the MChat craft behind the scenes, which understands the user who's using the Copilot, can then combine the information which is coming externally, for example, from your LOB systems. And we're going to have a quick video on that one in a second as well. Now, before we go there, I wanted to come back on something which April said and Chris went through as well, especially in the April's case. So we talk about the spectrum from low code to pro code. And also when we talk about the Copilot, almost like a bit of a off the beaten track, so to say, like April was saying, the Copilot itself helps you to be successful. It's not taking over your job. It's not intended to reduce the amount of value what we do as an individuals. It is intended to increase that. And as you saw with April's great demo, you could actually click through and include the columns by yourself directly within the Dataverse, but you can also use the natural language to ask the computer to do that for you. So it's kind of an additional user interface, additional way of communicating with the computer and with the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform to adjust the implementation, adjust the behavior based on your needs. So you don't have to know explicitly technical details of or even the code or any of those technical nuances. You can just request, dear computer, can you adjust on these things? And obviously being polite always helps. Just kidding. But we always want to be polite regardless. But that's kind of the storyline with Copilot agents as well. So we can start from low code to the pro code. We have the spectrum of things, and there's a different ways of, well, there's a decision makers between when we use the low code, when it goes to pro code. You can definitely use the low code within the in-house development. You can definitely use the low code options in many cases. If you want to offer an application in the store, you would have to fall currently at least in the pro code section of things. So the pro code is really giving you that reusable piece of code, which you can then easily move between the different tenants and environments and all of that stuff. And that typically is a decision maker between these things. And of course, the complexity behind the scenes, the reusability and the integrations are defining what kind of options you would actually use. Now, coming back on the pro code section, let's actually play a video which will quickly explain what is the art of possible related on the declarative agents within the Copilot. And I'll walk through the video as it plays around. And here we go. So this is actually a live local hosted Copilot implementation. And in this case, we've kind of created this imaginary Trade Genie local solution. But this really shows the power of the Copilot directly within the context of your Microsoft 365. So we can integrate and start using your custom Copilot, which integrates to another system. So it could be your project management system or backend system or HR system, where we have information about your users, your developers, your project managers. And we can start asking questions like, when is Trey or Avery or Sanjay available? We want to have a person who is capable of implementing things in TypeScript. Do we have those people? Or we do find that a integration to the HR system is giving us that information. And then we can actually combine that with the business data, what we have within the Microsoft 365, which is truly making this unique. So you're using the natural language, but then you're integrating to the backend LO-based system or HR system, and that information is available directly within the chat. So you using potentially even audio, talking to the computer, and you're getting the results from your backend system directly within the context of Copilot is really the really cool opportunity here as well. And that's just kind of a quick teaser on what is the art of possible. You might have actually seen that we showed the HTTP commands in the lower section. That was because it was actually running in a development environment mode, which is really, really cool. So you're able to actually test directly within the Copilot your custom development when you have the Copilot developer set up ready to go within your environment. Now let's actually jump to a quick demo related on that one. We don't have a massive amount of time, but I wanted to call out a few things related on the opportunities within the tooling and the assets which we have available for you to take advantage. Now, intentionally in Visual Studio Code, because that's where the pro development typically starts. I basically wanted to call out that we have a lot of ready-to-go tooling, which will simplify the development of Copilot extensibility, Office add-ins extensibility, SharePoint extensibility, and so on. So there's a lot of tooling available directly within Visual Studio Code, which gives you the opportunities of getting started. For example, creating a custom Copilot. I will just do it in here. Custom Copilot agents or custom engine agents. There are templates and tooling and projects which will create the needed connectivity directly to the Copilot or the backend systems within Azure, which will make it super easy for you to get started. This is all available in the Teams toolkit. This explicitly, the custom engine agent is in a preview setup right now as we're recording this or presenting this, but it will be available pretty soon in the public version as well. And there's a lot of samples, of course. So there's a lot of samples which you can take advantage of getting started on creating all of that needed extensibility. The same applies actually for Office add-ins. If you start creating Office add-ins, for example, Word add-ins, Excel add-ins, PowerPoint add-ins, you have the templates, you have the starting points, you have the tooling available for you, and you have a lot of samples available. The same applies for SharePoint Framework, which can be used to extend SharePoint, Viva Connection, Teams, Outlook, and so on. And a lot of tooling available, which will simplify development, even up to the level that I can click a check dependencies message, and I will get a message which is saying, hey, are we good to go with the development? And yes, we are in my case. So it actually validates my environment and makes sure that everything is good to go. So super easy to get started on development. And again, a lot of samples if needed to get inspiration and to get started on building capabilities for the Microsoft 365 as a pro development story. And of course, we have the SharePoint embedded tooling as well, which is really cool extensibility option for SharePoint embedded. Not going to deep dive on all of that stuff. Now, on top of that, I wanted to show a few more things, and I know that we're a bit late on the schedule, but there's a lot of opportunities to extend and bring your data directly within Office, Office 365, Microsoft 365, and all of those things. You can imagine that you can able to access the relevant business data directly within side of your Microsoft 365, with the Copilot being aware of where data is coming from and being able to tap into that data, which is great opportunity. Of course, you can build additional extensibility, for example, in Viva Connection, which will extend and access that information directly in any device easily, and then you're able to deep dive directly to the actual Microsoft Teams application or the backend data easily within any device. Now, Before we close up from my side, or doing a quick summary on things, there is so much data and so much guidance available for you to get started. So first of all, we just released Copilot Developer Camp this week. This is a great work what our cloud advocates are doing related on getting familiar with the extensibility options within the Microsoft 365 Copilot. So really going through the different agent options for Pro Developer Story. So please have a look on that one. There is a lot of also guidance related on Microsoft 365 Copilot extensibility in official docs, Teams development talks, SharePoint Framework documentation, how do you build these beautiful looking applications, and of course everything is available as a samples as well, and Office settings documentation. So please do take advantage of the existing assets. And I mentioned those samples. You should always remember that we have our unified sample solution gallery for Power Platform and Microsoft 365, where you can easily find relevant sample for Microsoft 365 Copilot, for Power Automate, for Power Apps, and so on. So there's a lot of samples what the Microsoft and the community have provided for you to take advantage. So really cool stuff. So please do take advantage of that. I guess that's it for the quick demo site. As said, a bit short on the time, but please take advantage of all of our community calls and all of the other things. We'll show a few more slides on that one, where we will deep dive more on all of these things in a case-by-case perspective. But let's actually go to the slides. I guess I will be joined by Mark on just a quickly summarizing some of these things. So Mark, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I have one question for you, which is kind of in the Wayback Machine, there used to be this thing we called full trust code. And there were a lot of doubts about, can I even touch the what I need to do in SharePoint and other technologies? And everything you just showed is just the tip of the iceberg of all the opportunity of how and what people can extend. But if you were to just sort of judge, even just a couple of years ago when SharePoint Framework was getting started and some of the new capabilities with Copilot, how much closer or even maybe beyond are we when people think, oh, I can't build full trust code, to now being able to build these really robust solutions in the ways that you showed? Where are we on the, not just the spectrum of opportunity, but the catching up to where we maybe were in on-prem, if not jumping ahead?
Do you have time? So what's the so I would say this is partly a philosophical question and philosophical answer. It's also how do we approach extensibility. So in those times when we were still in on-premises, we basically took over the on-premises deployment and we decorated everything, we modified everything, and which also had its downside of things. So the code itself was running completely in a full trust process, which basically was potentially a security issue as well. So you either needed to review all of the code or 100% trust what was actually deployed in the farm, because the code had access on everything. Now, as we have moved into this cloud age already a while ago, hopefully, well, we still see customers moving over, and that's great. The change is more like how we are approaching extensibility. It's no longer that we're taking over everything. We are putting extensibility where it matters, and then we take advantage of out-of-the-box capabilities. And that's one of the key kind of themes from today's webinar as well. Take advantage. If you don't, whenever you need to do and achieve something within the Microsoft Cloud, don't do extensibility first. Have a look on what the out-of-the-box capabilities are offering. And it might be that those are offering already way beyond what we had within on-premises. And then if you need to do low extensibility or low-code extensibility, that's great. You can modify things. You can do JSON definitions. You can take advantage of the brilliant Power Platform to modify things. Or if you need to do a bit more complicated scenarios, we still have the great option of doing pro development solutions and extensibility. Or if you're an ISV, you still have the option of building and offering in work or in process or in the experience solutions and capabilities directly within the Microsoft Teams or in the Microsoft Copilot. So are we above and beyond of the full trust? I would say we're way beyond what we had in on-premises, but that's also because out-of-the-box capabilities have evolved, and we're talking about in a different. It's kind of like talking. I don't want to. What would be a good comparison? We're talking about two different things. It's apples and oranges, so we cannot really compare how they beat or level up between each other.
I just love the concept that it's very rare that anybody can take down the farm by one wrong line of code.
Yes,
Those
yes,
days are definitely over. You don't want to get that
yes.
call. So if we
Yes,
can bring
actually, it was a
everybody,
one character. I've done it myself many times for many customers, so I do apologize on that. But being around for a while, you learn from those mistakes, and technically it could have been just the one created a signal wrong way in it or somewhere, and it took down the whole farm. And that is not possible anymore. And of course, that increases availability, reliability, trust. All of that is part of the subscription cost, so that the customers don't have to think about operational complexity anymore.
awesome. Well, if we can bring everybody back up, we've got one more thing. If we can grab a couple more minutes from both our presenters and our attendees and just do a quick round robin. If somebody were at the end of a conference or they've watched this webinar and you just wanted to provide them with some final thoughts in your space or just generally speaking, when we talk about the spectrum of opportunity, what would you tell somebody that's just walking away from here? Maybe what they tell their peers or maybe their manager of how they can take advantage of this capability within Microsoft 365 and Power Platform. So starting with Chris Kent, last thoughts.
Yeah, so I would say, although we've put this in a certain order, I would caution away from seeing this as building upon each other necessarily, right? So we've shown off different times you might want to use different tools or techniques depending on what your solution is and what you're trying to build. And the nice thing is you can move through them as needed. Right, but don't think that you have to start here and then you're eventually going to go there, right? You may never leave here because this meets all of your needs perfectly, but most likely you're going to have a combination throughout your tenant of all of these different things, depending on what you're doing. So.
And to your self-professed question, how do you keep your hair so silky smooth?
This is natural. Just natural.
All right, boss lady, aka April Dunnam, last thoughts.
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, I think as we saw today, kind of the Power Platform is integrated amongst all these different solutions, right? So if you're using List, and you're probably going to want to have some automation onto that at some point, right? So it definitely doesn't hurt to get into it if you're not already and learn some of the basics of the Power Platform. There's a lot involved in it, as you saw. There's apps, there's Copilots, there's automations and all that. So my big advice is kind of pick a tool that you think is going to be the most valuable for you and your organization, your business, and in your work, and kind of go with that and learn that and start that, and then see how you can slowly incorporate some of the other pieces of the platform to help with your business processes.
I love that. So there's always the age-old adage of if you do it once, great. If you do it twice, automate. And in your case, Power Automate. So thank you for that. Vesa, round us off, last thoughts? And then just so everybody knows, I also just want to share a few resources. We'll do that pretty quickly just so you know where you can go to learn more.
Cool. From my perspective, I would say it might feel overwhelming when you're coming into this world of all of these different options and products and capabilities and Power Platforms and Copilot and everything else. And it's my number one advice is to take it easy. It's overwhelming for every one of us. So take your time and book time for learning. Be patient. And looking to take advantage of the community assets as well. So we do have a lot of live community calls, samples, assets, guidance, and a lot of other community members, MVPs, Microsoft people who can help you on this journey. But take it easy and don't feel overwhelmed. We're all here to help.
I was just waiting for you to say sharing is caring, and my love of this whole webinar is that you all shared a ton. It really was a full spectrum of opportunity, learning, and of course a lot more to go learn, so that with these 3 great guides, where to get started, how to think about your solutions. We do have a couple of resources before we lose you, so that there are a lot of resources, a couple of links here on where to go to find out more about Power Platform, Copilot Studio, all the extensibility endpoints, and then some, especially what Vesa was just mentioning. Get involved in the community. If you have a question, there are a ton of people that love to answer, show you things, or on a recurring fashion, join the community calls and see the latest, greatest in action from people like you saw today. They have a really great series of community calls. Don't miss that. Diving into the next slide, there is also some specific website that you can go to where there is always a lot of sharing and caring. Just go to aka.ms/community/home, and you'll see a lot of those calls that we mentioned where you can go and join them and find out more about them. But also it is their main blog, a link to all the samples and solutions that you saw today and more, with just a ton of information to consume. When you're looking for something specifically about extending Microsoft 365 and Power Platform, this is the community offering of a single place to get all of that. Last resources slide, two last resources slide is if you want to learn about Copilot development. It's pretty new, but it also takes advantage of a lot of the same patterns and practices that we've had over the years. There's a great link here, aka.ms/m365 Copilot Dev, that will take you to learn more about the opportunities that Copilot now enables. And if we can just jump to the last slide, the adoption slide, I just want to call to attention, when you think about any resource across any product at Microsoft, and you're looking to take advantage of this one-to-many rollout of how you can communicate internally to help you just get the word out about a new technology that you're going to take advantage of, or to roll out a single product so that people know better how to use it. There's a great resource called adoption.microsoft.com. There's a lot of different products listed, a lot of different resources available to you. As you dig into this, you'll see, especially if you go and try one today at adoption.microsoft.com/Copilot, you'll see one great example of what the Adoption Center offers. I want to thank our presenters today. Thank you all, April, Vesa, and Chris, for showcasing a lot of great things, for putting together a great set of new slides that I know you're going to carry forward, we're going to carry forward. And to everybody out there, have a great rest of your day, head filled and shining lights on all of the spectrum of opportunities. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Wowee.